while I was for a long time I was a strong supporter of universal basic income, or UBI. No, I'm not so sure. I've changed quite a bit with my political views, especially in the last couple of years, as I never thought that we would be facing here in the United States or in other parts of the Western world, so-called democracies, I never thought we'd be facing something called vaccine mandates, mask mandates, vaccine passports. I never yet. So I've come to realize the degree to which, even in the so-called liberal democracies, the degree of dictatorial powers that would been assumed by the government against the people, and so that has really kind of shifted my political philosophy towards we need to be even more and more vigilant towards protecting freedoms and rights, civil rights. That if you give an inch to the government, they will take a mile. They'll take several miles. They've made that clear. They've made that obviously clear. And so, if we have something like universal basic income, then who's going to be in charge of distributing these funds? Well, obviously the government will be, and so there will also they'll be also in charge of withholding funds that are necessary just to pay the basic living expenses, such as food, shelter, and medical expenses. So we could be facing a situation with universal basic income whereby the government could decide, well, you did not get this vaccine, so we're just going to hold off on giving you your basic income. You're not going to be part of the universal part of society that gets that income because you did not behave according to the way we think you should behave. And that could be extended to all sorts of different activities. It could be just eating too much. You could say, oh, we see you bought at the grocery store. You noticed you bought a lot of junk food. Well, we did not approve of that, so we're going to have to withhold at least part of your income until you correct your behavior. And that could also extend to alcohol, booze. You could say, oh, you drank too much, so we're gonna withhold some of your income or all of your income until you stop buying so much booze, or if the government thinks you're partying too much, going out to nightclubs too often, they can say, oh no, sorry, we don't think that's a good behavior, so no more income for you. And some may think, oh yeah, that's far-fetched, but no, that's what they've been. That's currently going on in China. It's been going on before the pandemic hysteria, with what's called a social credit system, where they do that sort of thing, where they it's not necessarily tied to universal basic income, but they do things like they can go as far as limiting your ability to buy tickets to travel to locations, so they can basically become a prisoner to your own, within walking distance where you live. You can't buy any. You can't get on any mass transit because they can, if you did not behave in the way that the government, the CCP, thinks you should behave, then they can start limiting your ability to engage in certain activities, like moving around. That's the sort of place where I thought, well, yeah, I could see where you could have vaccine mandates in a place like China or North Korea, but I never thought I'd see it here in the United States of America. We're supposed to be the land of the free. We're supposed to be part of the free world. All those other locations that are also supposed to be part of the free world, but that has been just a matter of lip service. Apparently, they do not consider freedom important in principle. They just like to talk about it. But they don't. But when it comes to action, no, they do not believe in the principle of freedom. These places in the Western world that have implemented these vaccine mandates, mass vaccine passports, mask mandates. Yeah, even if it goes, there's even places here in the United States where people are taken off of transplant lists because they refuse to get the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, and so yeah, I think that really puts away the whole idea of the bleeding heart liberal. It should be more like we're like the cold, steel-hearted, heart of stone liberal, or the ice water for blood liberal, because that can't get much colder than that. Taking people off of transplant lists just because they do not behave in the way you think they should, and so that's what the supposed liberal Democrats, they support that sort of thing these days. In general, I mean, some maybe don't, but in general, they seem like the Democrats support it. It's limitless the amount of tyranny that they extend to, and really it's really a fascist form of leftist fascism. In actuality, fascism is nothing to do with being like right wing or left wing. It's necessarily does not have to do with that of political leanings. Specifically, fascism derives its term from the Latin term for a bundle of rods or sticks that are tightly wound together in a uniform fashion. That's where it was originally adopted by the Italian Mussolini's party to describe the kind of government he was trying to create, which was a tightly bound society, uniformly bound. And so that's why all these mass mandates and vaccine mandates, they're very fascist in nature, because they require uniformity and being tightly bound by those uniform rules, where it does not allow for any kind of deviation in what the government what the government decides what is best for society. It does not allow for any kind of libertarian freedom. It does not allow for free expression and free individuality or activity. It just requires very constrictive. It's like with a fascist bundle. It's like the sticks that are uniformly what it is. It's like a uniform. A bunch of sticks are wound are surrounding an inner rod. Like just all of these outer rods represent the citizens, and the inner rod represents the central government. Then there's usually an axe at the end of that central rod, and the people are representing the rods that represent the citizens. They strengthen that central government, and so that it becomes allowed to become more powerful and be able to be stronger, and that's what fascism is, and that's why these vaccine and mass mandates and vaccine passports, they're very fascist in nature. And it's no coincidence that when they say for the vaccine passports you have to show your papers showing you're vaccinated, or you're negative, have a negative PCR test, that you're showing the papers so that you're behaving according to the dictates of the government, and you're you're tightly constricted manner, according to what the government says is best. So yeah, that's why I'm thinking, like, if you have something like universal basic income, that's just going to go towards more towards that end of having the government being more and more in control of of the people of society, where they can just withhold payments to if you don't behave in a manner that they think is best for society as a whole. So that's why I'm thinking, well, maybe the UBI is not such a good thing. Now, I know people are saying, oh well, thinking there's so much automation going on. What's going to happen to all these people that are going to end up getting displaced by all this automation that's happening? All these robots coming in. Well, my response is I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. Right now, look at what's happening. Instead of being a glut of workers, there's a shortage of workers currently, and so I think that's oftentimes what happens with these predictions. I think it's really a folly to make predictions of any certainty about long-term future projections, whether it be scientific or societal, in terms of trends. Look at something like, remember there was a whole issue of during the aughts. I can't remember exactly when. Something it was early to mid aughts, about the peak oil. So there was a prediction that by, I don't know, was it like say 2012 or so, we'll have run out of the amount of oil that it was easily extracted. It was by that point it would take more energy to extract the oil than you would get out of the ground from the after the extraction process was over, and so that we would be in such a quandary there. We'd have a huge shortage of petroleum around the world. That would be it would create a civil emergency. It would get so bad by the teens, sometime in the teens, the 20 teens. But of course, now here we are at 2021, almost 2022, and what do we have? We have a glut of oil. We still have OPEC limiting their supply of oil just in an effort to try to avoid having a glut. That will reduce their prices. These predictions, it's very difficult to make these long-term predictions, whether it be of a scientific nature or a societal nature. I'm having doubts now that we will even have those fully automated cars driving around. I thought we would have further along in the process by now of having self-driving cars, but instead, basically, in terms of retail availability, I don't believe there's any such thing, at least not in the United States, of a fully automated car. There's always these unforeseen complications that limit, that we hadn't thought about, that are very important variables in the process, regarding any prediction, that if you don't foresee it, it's going to throw everything completely off. And so now, like we're seeing, here we are, 2021, almost 2022 and 22, and instead of having a glut of labor, we have a shortage of workers. And so also, instead of having fully automated cars, we're having cars that are short of the chips even for a non-automated car, a regular internal combustion engine car. Having a shortage of chips microchips for those, and now say for the fully electric cars, plug-in electrics, they require even more chips, microchips. Imagine the shortage for those, and then now we're thinking like fully automated cars, automobiles, which if they became commonplace, yes, that would reduce the huge reduction in labor just from fully automated vehicles. Just both in transportation and in trucking. But as it turns, Jim, like say, imagine a fully automated electric car, a self-driving car. That would require a huge number of microchips. and also there's the artificial intelligence aspect of them seems to be even more difficult than they were thinking earlier on. There's all sorts of complications that were not foreseen. You need to combine the artificial intelligence with the sensing equipment, robotic sensing equipment, and that's getting even that it has even another layer of complexity to the issue. So I don't think we're necessarily going to ever get to the point where there's going to be such a shortage. Such a shortage of jobs that we're going to absolutely need universal basic income. Plus, there's the issue of the added complexity of automation, of all these computer network systems. That also adds to the amount of labor that's needed to figure all that out, and repair it and design it, maintain it. That also adds to extra amounts of labor. Additionally, there's one other aspect is that there's a necessarily a incentive to create jobs that may or may not be necessary. But say there's levels of management that if they do not have people reporting to them, then they won't have a job themselves, the management. So they're necessarily incentivized to create positions so that they have people that report to them, to the management. Now, how can the shareholders and the management above them be sure that these positions are really necessary? And I would contend that it's often difficult for the ownership, the management, other parts of management, and the shareholders to know whether or not these jobs that were created by one level of management, whether or not those jobs are really necessary or not. I mean, sometimes you look at these job postings in office jobs especially, and wonder, oh, what does that mean? You have these, they're kind of unusual, and are they really necessary? Like, I have to wonder sometimes if they are. And so, but I think if they're not necessary, then there's still the management that creates the jobs. By that create, I mean just fill out a form and say, hey, I need these people. They still can get, even if the job isn't necessary, the one that's the management is that's creating this position in the first place, by creating like filling out a form and within the corporation say, oh yeah, I need these people. Oh yeah, I really need this. And they always can come up with some plausible reason why the job is necessary, but and then how are the shareholders and the executives going to know for sure whether that explanation is sound, or that why the job is needed or not? I mean, I think it can be often difficult since these corporations are so complex at all the levels of like, oh yeah, you need this, I need this. Okay, I guess that makes sense that this position of so and so is necessary. Okay, if you say so, and the manager goes, oh yeah, you need these people because they need them. They need to have somebody to report to them, or else they won't have a job. So then that way what happens is I think there's a perpetuation of job creation that would not otherwise happen if there's certain levels of management that did not need those jobs to report to them, or that level of management would not have their jobs. So it just kind of perpetuates itself. And so that's another way that jobs will end up just can continue on indefinitely. I think it would be nice to have more free time for a lot of people. I've never been a workaholic. So I'd prefer to work less hours than regular full-time. I definitely do. I'm glad my current job does not require mandatory overtime. But it's, so yeah, I'm not saying that the status quo is necessarily a great thing. I, but I don't know that necessarily UBI would be so great either. Not just for in matter of the government having control, but also because it's I think there's people get a certain level of a psychological identification and sense of purpose with their work, with the job, with the structure of a job. I've had stretches where I've been not working, sometimes by choice, and even for me, someone who is very, I never seem to get bored. I'm always thinking of ideas, thinking about things that, as a result, I never get bored. But even for me, after a certain length of time, I kind of almost crave to get back to that structure of a regular job. Now, I'm very different than most people, I think, in many respects. I think for a lot of people, if they don't have that regular job or employment, then they would get bored. They wouldn't know what to do with themselves. So I think a lot of times the universal basic income is thought up and dreamed of by people like myself, really imaginative and creative idea people, but not everybody is like us idea people, imaginative, creative idea people like we are. You have to realize a lot of people, they may need, psychologically really need that kind of structure of a regular work environment. They may not know what to do with themselves if they have so much, where it's 24/7 free time. It's just a thought. I'm not sure if I'm correct on that, but it's something to be considered, I think. So yeah, this video's gone a long time. I think I've covered most of the bases. So I hope, I don't know if anybody's still watching it, if this has gone on so long, but I guess that's all I have to say for now. If you're still watching, and you've watched this video all the way through, thanks for watching.